One guy's got a gun in his hand, shooting, and the other guy's got a knife, and he's stabbing the other guy. So I jump out of my car.
I hate when that shit happens at a light.
It never happened to me once.
The guy's shooting, another guy's stabbing. I hate that shit.
I jump out, I disarm the guy with the gun and the knife. One falls on the floor dead.
You couldn't pay these guys to do this, Phil, perfectly if you're with a girl.
So the guy falls on the floor, he's dead. The other guy's dying. So we go to the hospital, we go to Metropolitan Hospital's right there.
And she's still with you.
She's still with me, but she ain't my girlfriend. That's the part.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Here we are once again in Ossining, New York, the palatial estates, for the home of my partner in crime, my partner in law enforcement, Bill Cannon. What's up, Bill?
Yo, what's going on?
Everything's good, man. This is a very, very exciting day.
I feel like I'm meeting Babe Ruth. You know?
Yeah?
I really do. He's a Hall of Famer, this guy.
Yeah, he's definitely the GOAT. One of the GOATs.
Yeah.
The greatest that's ever done it.
Greatest of all time, they said. I mean, GOAT used to be a derogative term. Now it became the best,
Well, in
greatest
the
of all
age of
time.
acronyms,
Yeah.
the GOAT and AOC and all these things.
Well, we
you
should
gotta
tell
keep
our
it-
audience who we're talking
Well,
about.
before we do that, I just wanted to say, here we are. You got Andrew Steiner. He's our engineer. And like I said, today's a very special episode. But before we start, I know we wanted to do something, Bill, in regards to this show.
Yeah, we wanted to dedicate this to a member of the service who was killed this week, Detective Brian Simonson from the 102 Squad, and to let our audience know the real risks that law enforcement takes each and every day to protect all of us. And we salute him, and God bless his family.
All right, so this week, our guest probably was in a lot of situations, many more than we can count, just like life-threatening situations on a daily basis, because he was a very, very active police officer with the NYPD. In the meantime, during his career, he's known as the most decorated NYPD detective in history, over 2,000 arrests, over 100 off-duty collars. That means you're not working.
He was pretty busy.
You're not working. You're out on a date with your brother. And somehow we got girls in the car. Somehow you see somebody getting ready to do a robbery of a bodega. And I'm going to introduce him right now so he can talk about all those things and many more. Ralph Friedman, folks.
Hi, thank you for having me here.
It's an honor.
I don't know if we're worthy.
My honor.
So how many years now has it been since you've retired?
I got out January of 1984, officially. I was injured before that. I was in the hospital for quite a while. But I'm out going 35 years.
And the injury was a line of duty injury?
Yeah, line of duty injury. I was responding to a 1013 that an officer was calling, not an unfounded one. Wound up, the officer had to leave his 13 to assist me. We were in a bad accident where I was in an unmarked car and I got hit by a blue and white, responding to the same 13. And we were heading west, and we were going to turn south at a certain corner, and the radio car was coming from the north, heading south. And before we could turn, they T-boned it right on my side.
And how bad were you hurt?
Everybody was injured in the accident, but they were all treated and released. I wound up staying in the hospital for a couple of months. And my injuries at that time was I fractured my hip in 100 pieces. I broke my pelvic, left, right, upper and lower, and I broke all my ribs. The other officers, there was a female in the other car with a rookie driver, and they got out in about 12 hours. They lost some teeth, cut their knee, broke their arm. My partner, Timmy Kennedy, one of my best partners, he was driving at the time. Not that it was his fault, but he had a lot of injuries also, but he got out the same day also.
So you got 3/4.
Yeah.
At the end of it, you got 3/4.
Yes.
After completing how many years?
I did 14 years.
14 years. And in those 14 years...
I was pretty busy in those 14
You mentioned something like about Babe Ruth, right?
Right.
And it's like a lot of careers get cut short. You don't even... Can you just imagine? If he would... That's another 6 years
Ralph
to go.
has the Combat Cross, which is, I think there's less than a couple of hundred people in the history of New York City Police Department that have the Combat Cross. And just the name of that award gives visions of combat, right?
I think I read
That's what it is.
Right?
Ralph's book, Street Warrior, is a great book. I picked it up this week, and I got halfway through it. I'm a slow reader, but
Well, you became a cop.
but I really, really enjoyed it. I think I got to the combat cross story. Was that the one with your partner gets shot in the apartment? Cal?
No, that wasn't. I felt I should have got the combat cross.
They gave him an EPD for that one.
No, we got honorable mentions and we got awards outside the department for that. The combat cross story. I was working with a partner, Bobby DeMattis. We were on anti-crime patrol in the 41st precinct, which is known as Fort Apache in the South Bronx, and we were just doing patrol, and it was an ironic story, actually, because we were following a group of kids that we thought were going to be the perpetrators of a crime. It was late at night, and they were approaching people and demanding. Well, it was on the cusp of demanding, where it was going to be like an intimidation robbery.
Asking for
and
money.
we figured that's what it was going to lead to.
Asking for people in the street for money.
Right, and then they approached this one guy, and some words were exchanged, which we found out they called him cheap, and it went back and forth. And then the guy pulled out a gun and shot them. He shot a 15-year-old that we thought was going to be the perp, who wound up being the victim, and he shot him square in the chest right in front of us.
Oh.
We were sitting like 4 lanes of traffic over an intersection in an unmarked taxi cab when they first started using yellow cabs as undercover cars.
Yeah.
And I was in the back as a passenger, and my partner was driving. And we rolled up on this. As soon as they shot the kid, he floored it when we went right across the intersection, jumped out of the car, and the guy started firing at us right away. I was closest to him, and I chased him straight up the block with a running gun battle. And my partner, Bobby DeMattis, flanked out to the left and went up the other side of the street. So we tried to triangulate him into a spot, and then he stopped. And my partner hadn't fired yet and took cover behind the car. And I took cover behind like a steps protruding out of a tenement where none of my body was exposed, but he could see my head. And I emptied the first gun. I pulled the second gun. And meanwhile, this guy was...
The first gun is
they were both
5-shot?
No, I carried 2 6-shot Colts.
The Colt Detective Special, that was a great gun, right?
Yeah. Those were 6 shots, and that's why I carried them. The Colt was 6, and the S&Ws were 5. I don't know why.
And the cylinder went counterclockwise.
Smith & Wesson.
Right?
I'm not sure on that one. I just know it goes around. And I just want to hear
You know that it worked.
didn't have
anyway.
I know it worked.
You didn't have the speed loader yet, though, right?
No,
That was the speed loader wasn't invented yet,
But
right?
this guy was firing at us, 1 shot at each of us. He was actually alternating the shots. He had the presence of mind to do that. And he also reloaded 2 times.
Wow.
He had my partner was pinned, couldn't get a shot off. And then meanwhile, I'm still shooting it out with the guy. I went to a second gun. And I'm lining up my shots and taking my time once I had cover. And it had no effect on him. I thought I was missing. And I couldn't understand how I was. Finally, after he reloads his third time, he emptied his gun and reloaded twice.
So he's carrying extra ammo on
He
him.
had a lot of extra ammo. Finally, he pops up where my partner had a shot at him, and my partner fires 1 round, hits him in the shoulder, and he falls down because we saw him grab the shoulder and go down. And I ran up to him, and he still was going to have the presence of mind to raise the gun while I was standing over him. And I put one right between his eyes, when he was on the ground.
That'll do it.
That did it. When they got to pick him up, his skull opened up.
Was he wearing a vest?
His brain fell out.
Was he wearing a bulletproof
I
vest?
actually hit him like 9 times in the stomach, and it didn't take effect. He was high on drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
And the one bullet that my partner fired was like the straw that broke the
That must have been
back.
some strong Bronx Coronas he was drinking,
Yeah. I ain't kidding.
So you know what? So you got the combat cross from that, right? But I wanted can we just take it back to because the luck of the draw, getting the 4-1 right out of the gate. So what year did you graduate from the police academy?
1970.
And that's
beginning.
important because that was a different time back then.
Oh, the whole world was different.
People don't understand. Like, for one thing that I found really interesting in your book was that you mentioned once in a while on patrol, you used to take your own personal car out.
Oh, yeah, my car was authorized for 95% of my career.
So you went and you filled out a piece of paperwork for the department with your plate number and all that stuff, and from that point on, you could use
your car anytime.
But what did you get reimbursed for gas and stuff?
Well, the department gave us gas. We used department pumps in certain precincts.
And let's say you got into an accident with the car. What happens? Who pays for that?
That's a good question.
This was probably pre-indemnification, where they even indemnified you if you got sued.
Well, they identified us, but lucky enough, we didn't have an accident with that car. We had other unmarked cars, too. We were authorized to go to the pound and in Whitestone and just take out cars. I took out cars from there, too, that I used.
But that's once you were in anti-crime. Well, I'm jumping ahead of it. So you get the 4-1 right out of the gate? That's right out of the academy?
Yes.
And you stood there the whole time?
No, I stood there 5 years until I stood there in uniform for about a year and a half, a little less than a year and a half. Then I went into 4-1 anti-crime.
Okay.
And I stayed there 4 years.
Tell our listeners what anti-crime is. They don't understand that term.
Anti-crime is you work plain clothes. You're not a detective. You're still with a police officer's shield. And you, on a precinct level, you're doing the same as street crime. You blend into the neighborhood. You use milk trucks, taxi cabs, Con Ed trucks, put on a helmet and work on a construction site. You're blending into the neighborhood to catch criminals committing a crime in progress. So your conviction rate is high because you're a witness to the crime, which makes it better for the district attorney and for prosecuting the case. So our conviction rates were very high. And in those years, they took pleas a lot of times. And you blend in and try to be there. And you're working with officers that are in the precinct house that will pinpoint crime. It was like before CompStat, where bosses had to go down and describe times and occurrences and crime patterns. They pinpointed stuff on maps. And if you saw it was like between 5 and 7 and people are coming home from work from a certain bus stop or train station, we would position ourselves around there because that's where the crime reports, the 61s, were coming in where they were being robbed. So we wanted to put a stop to it, catch these criminals, and be there while they were committing the crime so we could put them away.
So you got into anti-crime after 4 years in the 4-1?
No, after a year.
After a year?
Got a year and a quarter.
So needless to say, coming right out of the gate, out of the academy, you're fresh, you're young. How old were you?
I was 21.
21 years old. You were in good shape because you're working out, right?
I was in excellent shape.
So you hit the street. You hit the streets running, right?
Yeah.
Did you make a call on your first day?
My first 2 minutes.
Wait a minute. You go to the desk officer and you introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Rob Friedman.
They send you. We went to roll call, and they send you out on a foot post, which that's a problem. You got to find it yourself. You know, we didn't have like now they have NSU and field training offices and neighborhood stabilization units and things where you went out with seasoned officers. Back then, they just put you out by yourself on the street.
They threw you into water.
Right?
Said
they threw
swim.
you in the water. You got to swim.
The first day out of the academy.
First day. No, your training was the academy. And then it was your common sense, your wits, and your guts, and you just went out there. That's how everybody did it.
The Bronx must have been like Beirut back then in the 70s.
It was.
Did you get a locker right away?
No, you didn't get no locker. You worked out of your car.
How long did you work? So your whole uniform was in your car?
Yeah. You wore your pants in. You changed your shirt and your
Ralph,
jacket
also,
in the car.
you're a nice Bronx Jewish boy. How did that go over in the Irish job in the Fort Apache there?
Well, first, right off the bat, they saw how I handled myself, and I was pretty good with my hands, and I was in great shape, and people didn't really mess with me.
So they didn't want to mess with you.
Yeah, I didn't really have a problem. I gained respect right away. I give respect and I get respect.
Right.
I didn't go in there like a know-it-all because, believe me, I knew nothing.
But isn't it in the busier houses, they always take new guys under their wing because they look out for you.
The job was very tight.
Yeah.
And exactly. They take you under your wing.
Yeah.
You got to realize, and they realize, that you're going to be eventually their backup.
That's right.
And believe me, I had a great career, and I might use the word I a lot in my stories, but I couldn't have done anything without great partners and backup guys from the precinct. You can't do it, It's impossible. It's these guys.
There's
in the
no
street.
I in team, Ralph.
That's right. But when I'm saying this, I want you to realize that it was the backup and my partners that made everything possible.
That's right.
But you get to the 4-1, right? And
That was
if
the
you could
busiest
just-
house in the city,
Oh, that's
probably
what I
in the
wanted to-
country. At the time. I have a TV series called Street Justice, and we have actual footage of what that time looked like. And we had to rent that footage for like $3,500 a minute because no one had videos back then except like Columbia Pictures or NBC.
It's hard to describe to people that live in New York now, young people, what it was like, what New York City was like back then.
Well, I grew up in the Bronx, and the South Bronx was nothing like the North Bronx. I was I was in the same borough, no less the same city, but the same borough, and it was a different world.
Right.
I grew up in an area that was all Italian, Jewish, and Irish. Now I was put into a black and Spanish neighborhood, and they had a different regard for life at the time. It was a Wild West show.
A lot of
I might as
gangs.
well be put on another planet, even though I was in the same borough.
It was all gangs, right?
There were gangs everywhere. There was criminals. There was drugs and robberies.
The big
and
drug
rape.
den was heroin, though, right?
Yeah, I never saw anything but heroin in the South Bronx. I didn't see anything else like coke or marijuana or pills until I went to the North Bronx. That was when I got promoted to detective in 1975.
So you came out. You said what year did you come on again?
Well, I came on as a trainee in 1968. I was too
68,
young.
okay.
So I spent 2 years doing
You got
indoor
promoted
work.
in 75. You did the okay.
I made police officer, it wasn't even police officer back then. You were a patrolman, PTL. Over the years, it became police officers.
Okay.
But we were patrolmen. And they only changed the name of the PBA just about a month ago. It was always called the Patrolmen's Benevolence.
Yeah.
Right.
It was just changed about a month ago to Police Benevolence Association.
Oh, wow.
It's
And
just
to make it
changed.
gender neutral, too.
But it was just done about a month ago.
Yeah, it makes sense.
True, yeah.
It was just, I was always surprised it wasn't done years ago.
Right.
But they changed a lot of names on the job. When I came on the job, when you ran into a psycho, they were called a psycho. Then
Yeah.
it became EDP. There was a certain point.
They
in
even
the
changed
job-
that, Ralph. It was
And now
emotionally
it's-
disturbed person. Now it's emotionally distressed person.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
But
They
we
wanted to
even
make it
changed
kinder.
They even changed the name of the department. We were members of the force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's members of the service.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
an
yeah.
MOS.
They don't
Now,
want
we used to be
They don't want
MOF.
you to be like Star Wars,
Yeah,
and the
they-
Force
yeah.
be with you.
They wanted to be now nicer, tamer.
Right.
Now you got to, instead of protecting ass, you're kissing ass.
So the 4-1 you said was the busiest precinct in New York City. It's the most
was the
highest in homicides, highest in
Highest in
robberies.
everything. I mean, I was a rookie.
The
and I went
radio
there-
was booming, right?
I was just going to say, I'd go in on a Friday or Saturday night. I always did night work, 4 to 12s, 6 to 2s, 4 to 1s, stuff like that. You'd go on a Friday or Saturday night, you'd get the radio call with the light and siren on, and you were backed up 20 high-profile jobs.
Oh shit! Insane.
Today's cops probably wouldn't even believe that.
And about radios
how it
too.
is.
I read in your book about.
Well, there was no portables.
So how did you get in touch with each other?
Well, we had a hard wire in the car.
Okay.
And then you had to use call boxes. See, when you got a foot post, I heard from a few guys.
Isn't that
today-
where they put the whiskey bottle inside that door?
the flask?
You can take a couple of swigs during your tour.
When you turn out a roll call, you have your name there, and then next to your name is a number from 1 to 59. It was still there a few years ago. I don't know if it's still there, but no cop today knew what it was. I talked to officers, and they said, "Hey, there's a number there. No one ever tells us what it is." But that was called your ring. You had to find a call box and call into the precinct TS and let them know you're alive. Whatever your ring was, say your number was 12. That means 12 minutes after every hour that you would call in and make a ring. That's your ring to let them know, "This is Patrolman Friedman. I'm still alive."
Okay.
Right, right.
Otherwise, they don't know.
They don't know, yeah.
The sergeant would drive around and give you a scratch, but that could be.
You
2
know, they were
hours, 3
Ralph. They were
hours.
still using that antiquated system on midnights when I was on the job, but they really didn't need to because they didn't want to admit there's cell phones and there's radios. You really don't need to ring the desk.
Well, transit was notorious. They had radios that never worked underground.
Right.
They're still trying to improve them.
Yeah, that's a tough spot though on the ground there. I'm sure that. But just working up top without the radio. Forget about the trains.
Well,
it's
once I
impossible.
got out of a car on we were going to a riot, and there was 4 of us in the car, and we got out of the car, and right after we got out of the car, it came over, which we didn't know. It said no plainclothes, no anti-crime in the area. So I get out of the car, and I'm in the riot, and all of a sudden the TPF cop shoots at me 6 times.
Oh my God.
I outran it. Luckily we all split up. But the cop
TPF
trained
was a
us-
tactical
tactical patrol force. It was a great unit of really
big guys, right?
you had to be over 6 foot. You had to be in great shape.
I
They
did
would
that.
send-
I did that, but it was called a task force. And
Yeah, that was a little different.
that was
the
a
task
little-
force. I think operated more in the daytime.
It was
we
kinder
did
and gentler,
6
the
in the
task
morning.
force.
What there
6 at
was?
night
It
to
was
2 in the morning.
SES, Special Event Squad.
Yeah.
Was the daytime guys. TPF was at night. They
That's what
mostly
we
did
talked about
6 to
changing the
2s.
names.
Right.
It used to be TPF.
Well,
and
they
then
did away with
changed it
them in 1984.
because of some brutal stuff. Like
Yeah,
a lot
they
of
would put
beatings.
them on the corner, and crime would stop within like 3 minutes. But they put 20 guys on a corner, and it was always hats and bats.
Yeah.
They took no shit.
You probably
They
can't even
cleaned out-
use that term anymore, hats
Well,
and
they
bats.
changed it. They changed it to task force, and I did that for 7 years. But they changed the name of it, and they softened it up a little bit. Like we used to practice drills and how to, it wasn't so much of whacking.
Well,
people
then now
in the
they
head.
changed the name. There's no more task force either. Now it's strategic response
That's
unit.
right.
Oh yeah,
That's right,
okay, yeah.
They were, and they really they shaped them up. They had to work out and stuff. Those guys, I have a couple of very good friends that stayed on with them, but they really got into shape and stuff. And they take it serious, and they do more training in high-powered rifles, shooting condition, active
that's good,
shooter
though.
condition.
That's good.
Oh, it's great.
Because it spreads
They
the
took
ESU
it to
out.
another level, and if there weren't too many slackers in there anyway, but if there was, they got weeded out. They really took it up a notch.
So this guy that shot at you, this TPF guy.
Oh, I never saw him again or anything. But I ran into a building and wound
How
up
many times did he shoot at you?
6 times. He probably emptied his gun on me.
Oh my God.
You must have did some good scattered running like a
Yeah.
rabbit.
I got into a building and it wound up. I got up to the roof where a lot of roofs were connected, and I wound up hooking up with my partner. But we wound up recovering 75 bombs that day.
Wow.
They were
Bombs?
lined up on the roof, Molotov cocktails
Oh.
that they were going to toss at the police, because they would go into the lampposts. They would break the box on the bottom and cut the lights, so you're in pitch black. It was really hard to believe some of the
Was
stuff
this
that went
the
on.
gangs were doing this?
Well, actually, no. This was the gangs got involved just as for fun, but it was the gypsy cabs at the time. They were unregulated, and we were cracking down on them.
This is really pre-Uber.
You know what's funny? Though? Think about what he
This is
just said.
before
In
cell
the middle,
phones, before
listen to
beepers,
this.
Before radio,
Listen to
before
this.
anything.
In the middle of all this crime, robberies, assaults, rapes, all this shit, you still got to do the minutia of worrying about like giving summonses to the.
Well, they weren't. The Liberty cabs were really bad at that time. They were just starting out. Most of them were criminals trying to take over the yellow cab business. And these guys were paying
because the
a
cabs
lot.
wouldn't come uptown.
Well, yeah, but the ones who did, they were cabs uptown, but they were pushing them out. And they were bad guys. They were raping passengers. We had some rape cases after that with gypsy cab drivers. They also all carried guns,
So now those guys are Uber drivers.
pretty much. No,
No lift.
Well, Uber has a lot of guys that got charged with rape. A lot of drivers getting charged with rape.
No, but back then, they were all criminals, pretty much.
That
It was
led
pretty
to
bad.
Street crime and the taxi.
And they're probably
units,
doing drug
right?
deliveries
There
too.
was a taxi unit there,
Yeah.
but they really were only. The taxi unit was really regulating. It was called the Hack Bureau.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And they were regulating yellows. Gypsies moved in on their own. There was no nothing. You would just say, "I'm a gypsy. I'm a gypsy." They put a sticker in the window. We'll pick you up.
Stop.
Or they would just pull up the bus stops if they saw you waiting.
Yeah, then they had the dollar vans. I remember those. That was a big
That's even
thing. When I was in
newer.
the task force, we used to have to follow the dollar vans around and lock those guys up. And that's a big pain in the ass. But in the middle of all that, man, the 4-1. So where did you do your detective work?
Well, when I got promoted to detective, I actually got sent to the 3-4, which was a very busy house, but I didn't want to be in Manhattan.
How come?
Well, because I had the whole Bronx system down. I grew up in the Bronx. I was raised in the Bronx, went to school in the Bronx, and I was a cop in the Bronx. So I knew the whole system. I knew the DAs, and I had a system worked out.
You had a system worked out where you can get through court a little quicker because...
Right, and even on the days that I had court cases, my bosses let me do this, and the DAs let me do it. I would stay home, and they would call me. So I didn't have to do a day shift. I might start at like 12 noon if it was an afternoon case. And they let me report right to court.
Because if you were an active cop back then, making a lot of arrests, which you were, you have to spend a lot of time in court, right?
A lot of time. But, you know, you had a lot of arrest time, but not as many cases went to trial. Because like I said, I was doing anti-crime, and me and my partner were the witnesses. So there was a lot of plea deals, and you didn't have to go to trial. Mm-hmm. You know, but when you had to go to trial, you didn't want to sit there a whole day. So if the case is not called in the morning, that means it's not even going to get called at 2 o'clock. So I was lucky enough that they let me operate the way I wanted. And like I didn't know the streets of the 3-4, and you'd have to travel the whole long borough to get to the court system down there.
Oh, you got to go from all the way up in Washington Heights down to Center Street over there.
Exactly.
Yep. That's a big pain in the ass.
Tremendous. And traffic in Manhattan was always horrible. And the parking.
Yeah.
There is no parking.
You know, so...
A couple of years ago, they were hammering cops, not just for taking the department car down there.
Well,
with a perp in the car.
There's big things happening just in the last 2 days. They're coming out with...
with the placards.
Permits,
They're doing away with placards.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
They're going to have, just like New York has a registration in the window, there's going to be a barcode in your window, like they do for the New York State registration.
So if you're a New York City cop, your
year.
registration is going to have a barcode on it?
No, you're going to have a separate barcode from your registration. There'll be 2 stickers in your window.
Like a sticker as a
sticker
parking
with a barcode.
permit. But
So
they
you can
also
walk by and identify a cop's car?
Yeah, pretty much. Well,
Well, you can do that
traffic
anyway
guy
with
can.
the placard. But you
That's
can't.
right.
You can never get rid of it if you didn't want to put your
But
placard.
the thing is, if you got this sticker and you're going to go to work and your car ain't working or it's in the shop, you take your wife's car, you got no parking. You know,
Right.
How you get to work? Well, you got a second car.
And not just that, they
What
only
they're
want you
gonna
to
do
park
now-
around where you work, too.
Well, this is what de Blasio says, which is total bullshit, that he's going to buy up more land for police and make them private lots next to the precinct.
Yeah, okay.
Now, we know what that means. But
It doesn't
what
make any
happened
sense.
is
Just the
they're
fact
going to
that
give
this is a
plaques.
priority.
They give plaques now. But the new rule is that if you get 3 summonses on your plaque, because, you know, there's regulations on the plaquets also.
Yeah, I know that.
But what happens is if you're going to get
different
3
levels of
you're gonna get
placards.
3, right? But you're going to get 3 strikes. If you get that 3rd strike, you lose parking for life.
For life.
Is what he's saying. You'll never get parking. It's crazy stuff.
Well, they
What about
shouldn't
when
be
you
giving
jump out of your
They
car?
shouldn't be giving these placards to politicians either. I see
Well-
politicians have "I am officially on police business" placard.
Well,
What
we
are they
all know
doing?
what that
You know?
goes on.
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
But one of the big things, he gave out 38,000 plaques to the UFT, United Federation of Teachers. Their last contract, so he picked up their voting block. He gave them all plaques.
Yeah.
And they usually have schoolyards or, you know, they get leeway around the school. But now they got
Yeah.
plaques. And there's like too many plaques in the city. It's
We'll take them away from cops.
yeah, so they give the 3-strike rule to
Yeah.
cops.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
right?
having a car in the city is considered a luxury, you know. So that they're going to tax you on that heavily.
They're
It's
talking
often,
about doing congestion pricing.
yeah, it's going
Right.
to happen.
But getting
Just a
back to
question
the
of time.
original question was, I went to the 3-4, and I had to do anything I could to get out of there. I had to get back to the Bronx. So what happened was I did 2
Wait,
shifts.
you didn't like the food in the 3-4. You didn't like the women
I
in the
wasn't
3-4.
there long enough.
Well, how long did you give yourself?
Well, I was there 2 days.
Morena,
2 days.
Dominicana,
You would
Colombiana.
have loved it.
Well, we had that in the Bronx too, but I felt more comfortable there. But the thing is, I knew the streets. I knew
get
that
it.
my
Yeah, I get it.
CIs were there.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a big pain in the ass.
You know, all the cops knew me. I knew the DAs. I had my system. It was streamlined, so I could operate at a higher speed
yeah, no,
and
good.
more volume. So what happened was I spent 2 days in the 3-4, and I went into CIC school, criminal investigation course,
Yeah.
that are required for the
I used to
detectives
teach
take.
that.
I used to teach that too.
And I went into there, and I had a boss that told me he can make it happen if I got a mutual, because the numbers were solid for each borough. Had to have a certain amount of detectives in each borough. He says, if you get a mutual, I'll get you there in 1 second. So I went out on my own time every day after the CIC school. I went to every precinct and put up a notice. Anyone want to do a mutual? And I would go every day because, you know how things get torn down.
Think about it. Who in the 4-1 doesn't want to
go
get
to
out of there and go to the 3-4?
No, I went. Well, what happened was I was assigned to the 3-4. I had to find anybody in the Bronx.
Yeah.
It was a guy from the 5-2 picked it up.
Oh,
So I went to the 5-2 squad,
yeah. Okay.
which I knew that area, but I knew the whole Bronx. So the guy got us a mutual while I was in school. So I got out of school, went back to the Bronx.
Oh, great.
I
What
was
is
at
the
home.
what is the 5-2 cover?
Well, it's a northern Bronx. It's like Woodlawn, Kingsbridge,
Okay.
Jerome, Webster.
I live in the Bronx right now. I'm in the 4-5.
I lived in the 4-5 for the last for 30 years. I lived in the 4-5.
Oh,
Now I moved out of state.
Oh, okay.
But I was in Throg's Neck right at the end by the Marina Del Rey.
Yeah, I'm right over the bridge.
So when there were police rackets, you just
That
walked.
country club.
You just walked to
Country
them.
club it's called.
Oh, you're in Country Club.
Yeah. So you got in the 5-2. Was that a busy house?
Not at the time, but it was pretty much.
He
like
made it busy though.
I
when he
got it
there.
busy. There were a lot of things that went on that, I got involved in. And the boss up there, he got to know me. It took a little while, but then he gave me free reign.
Okay.
I'll put it this way. I was a guy in the squad for almost 10 years. I never wore a suit and tie or a sport jacket. Might have been once or twice in 10 years.
Because you were out there.
He let me, I came into work an hour early, picked up my cases that were assigned to me, and I did all my DD5s and stuff an hour before. Then I would go out and tell him I'm investigating the case, but I would be pick up.
Now I want to go play. I did all my paper. Now I want to play.
I do pick up calls every day.
Pick up collars in the squad. Do you hear what he just said?
I did that every
He
day.
was doing pickup.
Every day.
I was in the squad for 5 years.
Well, when I first got up there were 19 guys in the squad. And, they did their work. I'm not knocking them or nothing, but they made 38 collars for the year, the whole
Well, you had to make 2 a month.
Well, they made 38 for the year.
Okay.
I walked in and made 160 on my own.
Oh, my God.
So they realized I wasn't trying to make them look bad or nothing. They just realized that was my thing,
Yeah,
you know. And I came into work early, did my detective work. You were required to do pick up your cases and do your DD5s. But I would plan them where I could be out in the street, say, going to a witness or a
Ralph, let me ask you
complainant.
something. You ever have a boss that doesn't want someone to be active, and he takes an attitude toward you like, "Hey, calm down here, take a day off, take a night off."
They were very good to me. I got to say, my bosses, actually, some of my bosses, when I had big cases, they wanted to go out with me.
Yeah.
And when they wanted to get, be active at certain times.
Well,
they had their
you've heard
choice.
the expression "success has many friends and failure
Well,
is very lonely." You've heard that one,
me
right?
and my partners made the squad look good.
Right.
We were bringing in the numbers, and even the precinct CO was very happy about it. And it brought up the clearance rate because if I pick up a street robbery, I have a complainant, I have a case.
Well, it could be
then
part of a pattern.
Then I close it out. We got clearance because I'm closing it with a collar, and it's closed in a positive manner. But it also led to help when a homicide would come in. I got all these people on the street that I could talk to. If you're doing active work on the street. And, I always followed everything up. So uniforms would come to me with information. One of my biggest cases in my career was made by a tip from a uniform that took a 61 that never should have went to the squad, except they said something.
What was it?
Well, this guy came into New York and slapped his ex-wife around. He just slapped her around. It was really a harassment.
Mm-hmm.
But as the two cops are walking out the door, she says, "Oh, by the way, my husband's wanted by the FBI."
Wow.
So they didn't know if it was true or not because, people say stuff to make you act more on the case.
Yeah.
She wanted him in jail for just slapping her. But if you say the FBI or, police are looking for him too, they figure you'll be more active to get him. So the cops came in, and they came right to me, the two uniforms that were making a 61 for harassment. So they said to me, "Hey, Ralph, this woman said the husband's wanted by the FBI. You want to check it out?" I said, "Of course." So I get on the phone while they're there, and I make a few calls, and I find out this guy broke out of 2 federal prisons,
Holy shit.
wanted for bank robbery. He owed the system 36 years, and he was still wanted. And that the FBI had him classified as extremely dangerous, vowed never to be taken alive, and they were after him for 18 months and can't get him.
Holy shit.
So I took the case and I told them to refer it to the squad and I'll catch it, me and my partner. And my partner was Roger Cortez at the time. And I brought it into the squad boss. And he just looked at me. I told him what I had. And he says, could we get him? I said, if you take me off the chart, I'll get him. Which means in detective talk that you're not going to be catching the influx of cases that a normal detective in a squad would be catching.
Let me work on this.
Which is like 10, 12 cases
You're asking the
a
boss,
day.
listen, let me work on this solely
Exclusively.
until I get him.
Right, that's how the FBI works on it. They got unlimited resources. They get a case, and that's it. But New York City detectives are getting flooded with cases all the time.
But a homicide,
Like an
you get how
ongoing-
many? What do you get? A set to work on the homicide?
At
Two
least,
sets?
yeah, you get at least a set. And then
Catch a homicide,
Yeah.
you got 2 sets maybe, and then you're back in the
back in the
mix.
chart, like catching the cases.
When I was
yeah.
on, that didn't happen. We catch a homicide. That's yours from beginning to end.
No, you still have
you
the
keep
homicide.
the case, but you start catching
start catching
cases
cases.
about a week or two after you catch it. So
Yeah, so you got 2 sets to do all the work on your homicide, and then obviously you're still going to work on it until.
Like I
it's
said,
solved,
my
but-
career ended in '84. Things had changed.
But-
But yeah, I know. I even heard of detectives handing it off so there wouldn't be overtime.
Oh yeah, that happens all the time. That's
know.
up to the boss.
The only time that happened is on night watch. If the night detectives that are covering the borough between 1 and 8 in the morning,
the night watch.
they would do the initial
I hated night
DD5s,
watch.
and then you hand it off to the precinct where the homicide occurred. But when we catch a homicide, we stay on it. You don't go to sleep for 2 days.
No,
You're
yeah,
up.
no, you
and
catch
then
it.
you still keep the case.
Yeah, you keep
know.
the case, but at some point you're going to start catching other
back
cases.
Well,
Well,
that's when it
catching
goes
one.
really cold. That would be, pretty much like at least a few weeks or a month at
yeah.
least.
Well,
know,
when I
we
left,
work on
when
it.
I left the squad, it was like I think you had 2 sets, unless there was something really hot and heavy. Then it would still. But
Oh,
anyway,
and Ralph, there's a like the homicide squad that just
Well,
does. They'll work on it while you're.
We had a homicide squad, but they came and went. There was like sometimes there was a borough homicide squad, and sometimes there wasn't. And sometimes when it went to the detective squad, there wasn't a homicide squad active.
Right.
They didn't have it. Sometimes they did. Sometimes just like the precinct squad, they kept changing our names. We were the squad. We were the precinct detective unit, PDU.
Right.
They sometimes you fell under uniform bosses. Sometimes you fell under detective bosses. You
was
bounced
changing.
around. You went with the flow. I did my own thing all the time. My thing was collars.
So, but the thing that got us here was the fact that you were working in the squad, and you were pretty much. But were you on your own when you were doing this, or you said you had other guys that were also doing this too? It's almost like you're working in the RIP,
I was just going to say that. I was
which
very
is robbery.
robbery investigation program. That's what I actually went into as a detective.
Did you create that?
No, I didn't create it. It was a guy named Paul O'Connor, and he invented that. But what happened was, this was even like a little before that, and we made it a robbery unit. What the boss did was have robberies couldn't go to anti-crime. They would go to, after they occurred and there was no arrest, they go to the squad.
Yeah.
So the boss had me catching every robbery. And I would be parting it up after a while with guys from anti-crime. So they were like on their way to getting a gold shield. It was like doing white shield work. They were doing detective work. The case was carried under my name. But I worked with anti-crime guys, and we handled just the robberies. It was robberies, and we did all the pickup guns. And then I still wanted more collars. I had the boss assign to me all the warrants in the precinct.
The warrants too.
I did all the
You were
warrants.
one
too.
man. Detective
Not a
squad.
one man. I had partners.
So
I had
Ralph,
great
let me
partners.
ask them, how many hours overtime were you working a year?
Well, I did a lot
Did
of-
you get paid for overtime back then?
Yes, we got paid. And when I was a cop, it was unlimited. When I made detective, there was a cap, which was called, you had a cap of 100. Then they raised it to 125 hours
A month?
per month.
They cut it down to 40.
There's not much time for sleep during all of that, right?
But it didn't count audit overtime. Like if you were ordered to go to a parade on your day off, or if you were ordered to stay on a homicide, or if it was a rape pattern, something out of the ordinary, you could be ordered to. My boss, you got to understand, I made my bosses look good, and one hand washes the other. It's like that in any job,
So you didn't go to too many details.
unless I wanted to.
Uh huh.
because every time I went to a detail, I made a collar.
He liked the car
And how
show.
about
He
vacation?
wanted to go to the car show.
Did you take vacation time?
I worked on my vacation time, but I took vacation time too.
But you had a lot. You
But
know,
I-
from the
I-
book I read,
you
you
were
had
allowed
you
to-
dated. You dated. You had a lot of girlfriends.
Yeah, I was kept busy with that.
But that's what you did on your RDO, your regular day off. You
I
probably
did it
go
while
on-
I was working too.
Okay. You go
We
on
had
a couple of dates.
we had to overlap hours here
Uh-huh.
because I was always on the clock. But I had like tons of time to take off. But they let me work my vacation. If you were a detective,
Uh-huh.
you were allowed to work your vacation in uniform, and I got a kick out of that too.
Let me ask you a question. You
I
made a
enjoyed
lot.
working.
You made a lot of off-duty collars, and to me, it's fascinating because, you just never stopped, right?
Never
So you're out on a date with a girl.
If I saw
Like in
a
the book,
crime-
you're out with your brother, and you're double dating.
A lot of times it was with different girls. It was with my brother. It was with friends.
And you just happen to look to your right, and
Yeah,
you see
they
this
were
doesn't
all-
look right.
They had I don't think I ever made maybe one or a couple of misdemeanors off duty.
No, this is
Most of them
serious.
were felony.
Yeah, yeah, you
I
were-
mean, I had double homicides off duty.
Tell us about how does that?
Well, I was with a girl then too.
What happened? Tell
That
us.
was wasn't supposed to be the girl I was with.
Oh yeah.
What happened was
yeah.
in those days when you came into guns and drugs, you're allowed to. It was common practice to take them home. I mean, this sounds ridiculous, but I had a lot of guns in my house.
because-
heroin.
What did you have to do if you didn't bring it home?
You vouched it, but you didn't have nowhere to leave it.
And you had to go down.
So you
down.
took it, right. So I had to take it home, and they let you take it down on your day off or whenever you were working, if you wanted to squeeze in it. But you had the vouched evidence in your house. Sounds crazy.
That is
But this is
crazy.
it's how it went on.
But who else should have it other than the arresting officer anyway? I mean,
But at that time, they didn't want the chain of command. Now they allowed a chain of command.
Chain
to
of
be-
custody, you mean?
Chain of custody.
Yeah,
chain of custody, I meant, sorry. But now that you drop it in a drop safe behind the desk, that's what last I did. I mean, that was at the end.
Yeah, there's a narcotics safe now.
Yeah, and a gun
yeah,
safe
gun
and stuff
safe,
like
yeah,
that. They had gun pickups.
Ralph, could you
too.
bring that kilo in that you brought home yesterday?
Yeah. No, but when you had your day off. So anyway, I had a day off, and I was with this girl that I was seeing, but it wasn't my regular girlfriend. So anyway, I go downtown to take it to ballistics, right? So I take the gun down here, and it was a pretty girl. We were all young back then.
oh, so you're both together right now?
Yeah, I took the girl with me.
Okay, yeah.
I said,
You're taking it down to drop off the gun.
well, I'm going to have it tested.
It was bring a girlfriend to work day.
So I bring her down there, and the detectives that were working in ballistics liked her, and they started showing off.
Because they didn't bring a girl to work
They
that
didn't
day.
have a girl to work with.
They didn't hear about that day.
They didn't hear that. They didn't get the memo. So they started firing like guns from Al Capone's time, machine
shit.
guns and stuff. They started firing them into. They used to fire them into a tremendous water tank. And that would stop the bullet, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And then they have the markings and they do all the stuff they got to do.
Cool stuff.
Yeah. So, we had a good time down there. Everyone
They're
was showing
buffing
up.
out with the girl.
Right.
Trying to impress his girlfriend
Yeah.
on bring the girlfriend to work day.
So we're driving back from there.
Uh-huh.
We had a nice day out there and stuff. And it was a pouring rain. And the East River Drive got flooded, right?
Oh.
So I had to get off the East River Drive. And I'm driving north on First Avenue. And I get up to it was teeming rain. You could hardly see.
You're in a car, or you?
I'm
on
in
your
my own
motorcycle?
personal car.
Oh, I thought you had her on the Harley.
No, I brought my Harley to work for jobs, but that was authorized too. But I got the girl in the car, and all of a sudden I started hearing shots fired. And a second later, because these things happen in a couple of seconds, there's two bodies falling on the hood of my car while I'm stopped at a light at 105th Street and First Avenue. And the
El
guy,
Barrio, 2-3.
two bodies.
No, I said El Barrio, the 2-3.
So actually, it's two bodies, and one guy's got a gun in his hand shooting, and the other guy's got a knife and he's stabbing the other guy.
It's like a movie, man.
So I jump out
Every
of
one of
my
these
car.
I
stories
hate
is
when
like
that
a
shit
movie.
happens at a light.
Yeah,
It never happened to me once.
annoying.
One guy's shooting, another guy stabbing. I hate that shit.
Blood. I'm waxing my car.
It's New York in the 70s, late 70s.
This was common. So I jump out. I disarm the guy with a gun and the knife. One falls on the floor dead.
You couldn't pay these guys to do this so perfectly if you were with a girl.
So the guy falls on the floor. He's dead. The other guy's dying. So we go to the hospital. We go to Metropolitan Hospital's right there.
And she's still with you.
She's still with me, but she ain't my girlfriend. Yeah, that's the part. So I had to call
She's
my
assisting
brother.
on this collar.
Now I got the press is responding, bosses are responding, cops are responding. And I had to call my brother to get this girl out of here before the press puts her in the paper. Right? So my brother races down here, and he gets the girl, and he gets her out of
So your brother gets laid on your dime.
Probably.
So she
I'm
was
stuck with-
assisting you in the collar and went back to the station out to start up the paperwork.
This is what happened to me on Bring a Girlfriend to Work Day. Yeah.
You just mentioned something about
That
talking
was
to
one of the
press.
off-duty collars.
That
Two
I-
collars.
In the book, you mentioned about talking to the press, which doesn't really happen that much. You were involved in a shooting, your partner got shot, and then you were in the hospital, and the mayor came down.
Yeah, he landed his helicopter on Pelham Parkway to talk to me before I went on a press, on a press thing.
I mean, when was the last time that you saw a cop? First of all, you couldn't
They
even
would
do
never
that
let you
nowadays
do that now,
because
yeah.
there's like a 48-hour rule or something that you can't talk anymore,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Which
know,
they're
like
trying
I
to
said,
waive.
this is 50 years ago, 40 to 50 years ago. We're
So here
talking-
you are, a cop, man, at the time, and you're going to do a press conference.
Yeah, I did one right out of Jacoby Hospital.
And
But the mayor wanted to speak to me first. And it was Mayor Lindsay, and he was really nice, and he really seemed concerned about my partner.
wow, I can't. That's amazing. It's amazing.
Ralph
time.
Friedman is calling a press conference. Everyone go to the rear room.
Well, it was very high profile. A police officer getting, my partner was shot. Cal Unger was shot like 7 times. 2 of them were ricochet bullets.
in a darkened apartment.
Yeah. He took it, and the whole shootout, we exchanged 18 rounds at 3 feet away and closer.
And you couldn't see 2 feet in front of you.
It was all smoke and blood.
Ralph,
And the funny thing is,
back then, Ralph, how many rounds did you carry with you? You carried 2 guns.
I carried 2 guns, was 12 rounds.
Yeah.
And I wore like 6 to 12 bullets on my belt.
So you were like one of those Spanish guys with the,
Nah.
with the guns, with the bullets across your chest.
But your belt
the
actually had
crisscross.
the little loops to put the rounds
Exactly.
in, right?
Yeah, I think I still have it in my car outside. I keep bullets in the car, a couple of bullets.
strapped right now, Ralph?
Of course. Of course.
Protected in case some off-duty collar comes in here.
Winds up in us thing. You know what? You say that, and if it's going to ever happen it's going to happen when Ralph is there. I did 20 years
What
in
do
the
you- what
job.
do you carry?
I made a few
nobody ever landed on my car. Maybe I had a homeless guy try to wash my window, but no
I never had a
each other.
stabbed guy or a shot
I've even
guy
made a
lived on
few arrests over the years when I was retired, but it didn't require me using my weapon or anything. But I held people for the police. I grabbed the guy on a stabbing. I had a robbery once, a person on the street, even while I'm retired.
Tell us about the one with the stabbing. And what are you doing?
Well, I was in Manhattan. I was visiting some friends that were bouncing at a bar, and I saw a guy getting stabbed right across the street. I ran over and grabbed the guy and disarmed him and held him for the police.
What do you
That was back in the 80s. But
Ralph,
after I retired,
what are you carrying these days?
a 38 Detective Special, 6 shots. Same one I carried.
I guess it's
I never went to automatics.
It's a good luck gun, I guess, right?
Yeah, did the job. I wound
alive
up
all
shooting
these
8
years.
guys over the course of my career, killing 4 of them.
Oh.
And you got the tattoo?
Yeah, on my hand it says justified 4 times. That signifies the 4 times I had to go to the grand jury.
When you go like
explain my
Ralph,
actions.
when you go out to a bar, say in Florida or something,
I don't
and your
drink, so
hand,
I really don't go to
Oh,
bars.
okay. So, but I was just
know.
going to say, if your hand hits the bar and someone says, "What the hell is that?"
Well, people ask me.
They ask you,
ask.
and what-
They do say ask. I tell them it's I had to kill people in the line of duty, perpetrators, and I had to justify my actions before a grand jury, and it goes on your record as a justifiable homicide. So they're justified.
Do they
Could've
look
been
at you?
Everybody, every officer has to explain themselves when you use your weapon. If it results in a death or an injury or nothing,
Let me
even
ask
if you
some,
just fire.
Ralph. Ralph, you think you have any PTSD from those?
No,
incidents?
no.
So you're cool with all of this shit.
I felt I was doing my job, and I felt
No, but I mean, you've been involved in a lot of violence in your life.
I accepted it as part of the job, and I was able to handle it. And I felt it was, I felt good actually about it because I saved someone else's life, my partner's and my own. So I didn't feel that I wasn't shell shocked or nothing. And it's part of the job. You got to accept it. I know it does affect some people, but most officers could handle it.
There's a lot who can't. There's a lot who can't.
I think there's more officers that could because you do hold back. I never go out there with the intention of shooting someone. And even though I shot a lot of people and had to kill a few, it's a small percentage of the amount of work that I've done. It's very small, but it's more than most officers.
But a
had
guy
to do.
like you could not exist today because they would take you off the road.
They take you off the
It's
road.
a different time, though, too. When I'm watching a
If you
movie,
get 3 civilian complaints, they pull you in. I got off the job with 205 complaints.
Oh, shit.
yeah.
But I have out of the 205, I have about 150 of them at home that I was able to get the copies of, and they're all stamped in red, unsubstantiated, But that's part of doing business, you know what I mean? Just
that
like going
CCRB
to court,
came out hot and heavy
CCRB.
when I was.
But it's even worse today. Today's officers have it really tough, I think, because not
The
only
whole
do they have-
video stuff is crazy.
everything's
so many
videoed.
guns in the street, though, when you were on
There's
patrol.
a lot of oversight that's unnecessary,
It's a big difference now with the amount of guns that were on
and
the
they don't get
streets
the
back
backing
then.
of the public or politicians. They
I
have
mean,
a tough
now you
job.
hear about a gun on the street or somebody getting collared for a gun. It's a big deal. Back then, it seemed like
Back then-
everybody had a gun.
When I went out on patrol, I picked what kind of collar I wanted that day. Was I going to make a robbery or a gun? There was just so much to choose from.
I was watching there's a video on YouTube, and it's called Saturday Night in Fort Apache. And
I'm in that a lot. I didn't create it, but they drove in my car to film that. The whole thing was filmed of my unit. I'm in it a lot. You'd have to know what I look like to see me if I pointed it out, but I'm in it a lot. And it was all filmed from my car. It was a 55 Merc I had at the time.
Bill, you got to see this. The way they're doing like, first of all, they didn't have a color of the day. These guys that are doing the anti-crime from the precinct that are putting perps up against the wall, suspects up against the wall, they don't look that much different than the actual suspects.
That's
and then
the
they
way you
have
do it, man.
they have their guns out while they're doing the pat down. And the gun is like by the side.
well-
It's actually on the person's body.
Yeah.
That's against the wall, and you have one officer is in charge of maybe 2 or 3 guys that's
At
on
least,
the wall,
yeah.
and then there's another officer. He's got another 3 guys, and the officer he's pushing one guy said stay on the wall with his free hand, and then he's going to
That
the
was
other guy.
Sergeant Bill Taylor in
Yeah,
the
he's
show.
pushing the other guys with the gun in the other hand.
Is that the Chief Taylor? Did he become
he
Chief
was
Taylor?
a sergeant. He came
Oh,
from
okay.
Queens, and he was a super active sergeant and cop.
Yeah, it was just a different time. The way they talked to people back then, it was authoritative. It was complete control.
But
You
you
had-
were also dealing in the precincts that were profiled in these kind of days were very busy houses. These were what they call A precincts or shit houses or ghetto houses. And you were dealing with the kind of people that if you gave them an inch, they would take a foot. If you didn't act like that, you would get hurt, shot, or killed. You had to come on strong. The job wanted you to be masculine. Bosses, politicians, they sent you out to get bad guys. It's not today. It's different. That's why a gun.
that was an
collar today is rare.
proactive police department back
Right.
then.
Today it's reactive. Back then it was proactive. They wanted you to go out, turn out, and make collars.
Right.
They didn't want you to spend time, writing summonses. It was a tool of the trade, writing summonses, and sometimes you had to, but you were sent out to get bad guys. They wanted bad guys or to protect the public. That was your job as a police officer.
Oh, Ralph,
Not
when they started,
dancing in
Right,
events.
Bill
and
mentioned
stuff.
that last week.
It's
dancing
terrible.
or singing songs on the street, it's ridiculous.
It's
But Ralph,
sad.
after your career in the 80s, probably the middle 80s, when they first started RIP units, the criteria to get a RIP unit, this was like, I guess, 1984, 1985, was the precinct had to have 100 robberies or more per month. I mean, there's
Well,
not
that
a
was
precinct.
very easy in the South Bronx.
Right, no, but there's not a precinct in the city now that gets 100 robberies a month. But back then, there was lots of precincts that got 100 a month.
Yeah,
so
that's
you're
right.
talking
It was a Wild West
1,200 to
show.
1,500, 2,000 robberies a year for one precinct.
Oh yeah, more.
One precinct.
Probably more.
Oh, the Bronx, 4-1 probably had 3,000 robberies a year, easily.
It was all day long.
Right, people
I don't even
can't
know what the numbers
understand
could be.
what that
Yeah.
is. They just have no. But they hamstrung the police now, maybe because crime has dropped.
Well, that's why the Bronx itself. I mean, I know there's other bad in each borough. Like you got Bed-Stuy and you got Harlem and stuff. But when you talk about the Bronx is known throughout the whole world.
Right.
People in other countries hear the Bronx. It has a connotation.
Well, even now
but they
that-
don't want to go there. They want to hear about it. They want to be close by going to Manhattan as a tourist, but they don't want to go in the Bronx. You go in the Bronx, you were getting mugged, shot, or assaulted.
Look
or
at
killed.
now. Look at even now that all these other boroughs are developing. Obviously, Manhattan, the price of real estate got so high that the younger people started buying Astoria, all these different neighborhoods in
Harlem
Queens. Then they
is the most
spread
up and coming.
Yeah, then in Harlem, and then they spread their way to Brooklyn. Brooklyn is very,
Even
very
the
expensive
Bronx.
right now. And
The
then
Bronx
you
is
also
built up.
have. Even Washington Heights is up there. The one borough that still lags behind all that real estate development is the Bronx. It's never changed.
It is. Believe
It's
me,
getting better.
changed.
It's getting
It's
better.
got-
It's very
it's
artsy
gotten
right
better.
now. All the art people supposedly that lived in Brooklyn that got had to move out because the high pricing. A lot of them supposedly, I read an article, a real estate article. They're all settling in the Bronx now, so it's very artsy. You got a lot of art going on in certain parts of the Bronx.
But if you see what it looked like back in the 70s, it was just unbelievable. Buildings burnt down. They stole the copper. They
That's right.
flooded. Buildings looked like they were hit by bombs. And if you want to really see this, I have actual footage in my TV series, Street Justice: The Bronx. That's available now on Amazon. But if you see that footage, then you'll believe. You'd have to see it to believe it.
it was like a war zone.
It's it was like it was not like it was.
It was a war
It was
zone.
It was a war zone.
you watch a lot of early rap videos. You could see
Rap
some
wasn't
of,
invented yet.
No, but
This
I'm
is
just
even
saying
before that.
but in the rap came around like 79, 80, 81. You could
Yeah,
see
but I was there in 1970. This
Okay.
was from the 60s.
But you could
and the
still
70s.
see it.
When I came on in 70,
Yeah.
1970, I was still grabbing guys with zip guns.
Wow.
Guns made out of a one-shot gun out of an antenna. Just at the tail end of that, because that was like
Yeah.
50s and 60s.
Yeah.
But I came across a few of them.
You got to be a pretty down on your look stick-up kid to have a zip gun in 1970. Like, really?
You know,
Slingshots.
Just get out.
heroin was so big and nodding out on the street. You got to realize I came there before cell phones, before beepers, before computers, before
Police
portable
radios.
before anything. It's 9/11, 911 was even new. That only came out in 68. So coming on in 70, it was still,
A lot of police
new.
reports or people
everything was written by
calling
hand.
to the precinct too, right?
Communications was in each borough. You had to dial 7 numbers or 10 numbers to get to a. In the Bronx, it was in a garage in the back of the 4-6 precinct was the communication center for the whole borough.
So, Ralph, that was the old story when you needed help. You sometimes had to depend on whether the community liked you or not, whether they would call 911 for you, right? To get you back
There were
up.
call boxes and pay
Yeah.
phones on the streets.
Right.
You had to have change in your pocket.
But sometimes
You had to know where
community
to-
members would,
you know.
would come to your assistance, I bet,
Oh,
right?
yeah, some people would.
Yeah.
But like I say, back then they wanted bad guys off the street.
Right.
Now, in this day and age, it seems like it's like catered to the perp years. People come to the
Yeah.
defense of perps. They're against cops. Politicians against cops.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Mayors against cops. The governor. Look at the governor. They're releasing cop killers every week. Mass murderers. They didn't even let anyone know when the Palm Sunday massacre guy got out. 3 months later, the press had it.
Wow.
This guy killed 11 people. 8 of them were kids, infants to
Yeah, I
7-year-old.
remember that case.
They let them out of
7-5 it was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
jail. They let everyone out. Cop killers getting out of jail every month.
I think they were rehabilitated. That's what it is.
Rehabilitated. They should have got life without parole or killed on apprehension.
Yeah.
Well, this was an exciting episode, wasn't it?
I
Did you have
swear
a
to
good time,
God, man,
Ralph?
I'm so in. This is amazing to me. I can't wait for the next
We're
segment.
going
of
to come
this.
back. We're going to come back. And we're going to do a part 2.
We got Babe Ruth here. Right?
We're going to take a break right now. We're going to refresh our cups of tea and come back for part 2 with Ralph Friedman.
Looking forward to it.